Okay, this is the Reading Center report for last week. I received this on March 17th. Again, I don't know whether it's as of the end of the day on Friday or midday on Monday, but I'm guessing it's the end of the day Friday. So nobody that has a heavy-duty issue, except, let's see, in other words, she doesn't have a red mark, your lab teacher, but I am noticing a couple of things with people in the reading strategies lab that only have, and this person too, there's not a note there, but you should have at least 6 hours by this time. So a couple of these people, again, there's no red note there, so I'm not concerned about it until they start being concerned about it. But if it's almost mid-semester, and we need to talk about that too, and you only have half of the hours you're supposed to have there, you need to kind of, start thinking in terms of getting down there, okay? So, again, they're not showing me a big problem yet, but please don't miss any more time, because what happens is people get, they think, oh, well, they're not having a problem with me, and they keep missing, and then pretty soon you're going to, we get past mid-semester, you get to a point where there aren't enough hours left in the semester to make those hours up. Okay, so come and look at that if you want to during the break. Okay, like I said, we need to talk about where we are in the semester, looking at our syllabus. This is week 7, and as you probably know or should figure out soon, the college semester, schools that are on a semester schedule, the rule is that we have to have, it's a 17-week semester, okay? The last week of that is officially called finals week. So the rule is that you have 16 weeks of instruction, and then the 17th week is finals week. So if you think about that, 16 weeks of instruction and then a finals week, next week is the 8th week of class, which means it's the middle of the term, okay? So we need to start talking about what's going to happen next week. Not this week, but next week, just kind of a heads up. You'll notice that on Thursday, March 27th, instead of our regular reading and writing exercise, we have the midterm exam. Okay, we do have what I call a formal midterm in here. That is also the second journal check. So we have this journal topic and then the next one, and then you will turn those journals in again to be checked. So what's going to happen on this day is that I won't do any talking or anything. You will just come in, I will give you an exam, which will cover everything we've done so far, and you will have the whole 2 hours to work on it, and it will take you 2 hours, okay? There shouldn't be any problem. If you have been doing what you should have been doing up until now, you shouldn't have any trouble with the midterm exam. It's just going to ask you to do what we've been studying. One heads up that I do want to give people, though, is if you are in supportive services and you do want to take it at their testing center for whatever reason, you need to sign up with them at least 48 hours in advance, okay? So if you want to do that, you need to start thinking about getting over there, because a week from today would be your last chance to do that, okay? So we'll talk about that again as, you know, next Tuesday, but I just want to kind of give people a heads up. If you're taking other classes, it's very likely not all classes give midterms. I don't give them in my writing class because they're doing out-of-class writing, but many classes do. So just kind of be aware. Lots of times it comes about the middle of the semester, you have big tests, you have big papers due in some classes, so you want to kind of be aware of that. Then, the other thing we need to be aware of is spring break is the week after that. So be aware, one thing you guys need to know is, if you're thinking, oh yeah, I know we have spring break, over the break I'll go down and catch up on the reading center hours, they're closed, okay? Sometimes the library is open over spring break so people can study, but that's the library, and they're usually only open like from 10 to 2 or something. Sometimes they don't have money to do that, but the reading center, I happen to know, is not open. And sometimes the ESSC is open, but I don't know that they are. It's different every semester, because sometimes they don't have money to pay people to be there. And I have a feeling that's the case this time, okay? So just be aware of that, okay? And I'll remind you of that again when the time comes. Okay, so let's look at the papers I just handed back. One thing I want to emphasize is be sure that you are looking over the papers I give back. I'm noticing that a lot of people are continuing to make the same mistakes over and over again. And my thought is that they are, when I give something back to you, you're just sticking it in your binder and not looking at it. So you need to be reading things over. Okay, the vocabulary quiz, and this is one of the issues. What a number of people, and this was a good example of it, what a number of people are doing on the vocabulary quizzes, and I'm wondering whether it may be a misunderstanding with the two different assignments. These are vocabulary quizzes, okay? It says so up here, I gotta do those over again. Those are kind of gone off the top with the copy machine. But these are quizzes, so again, read the directions. Using the knowledge of context clues and word parts, write an appropriate definition for each italicized word, okay? What a lot of people are doing, again, you're giving me too much information here. This isn't asking you to paraphrase the sentence. That's what I'm wondering. Some people are writing so much stuff here that I'm thinking maybe they're confusing this with the paraphrase. This is a different thing. This is asking you to tell me what the whole thing says, okay? So when you're doing these vocab quizzes, again, the problem is, and I kind of was generous with the grading because I could kind of see what people are doing, but I don't want to let you keep doing that because it's not what the word means. This is good. The person picked up the word part clue, but this is the problem, okay? What this person is doing is paraphrasing that sentence. What they need to be doing is just telling me what this word means, okay? So be sure, take a few minutes to double check that what you write down here can be put into this sentence and still make sense. So the answer here, don't intervene, doesn't make any sense. You see what I'm saying? And the same thing here. How can you don't get the same problem, her problems with her? It doesn't make any sense. What you write here has to pretty much, how can you make the same for problems? That was okay, not great, but once you get that negative in there, basically, like I said, I gave people credit for this, but after this, I'm going to start marking off. If what you write here isn't what the word means, not the whole sentence, the word. Okay, same thing here. Amicable does not mean they are no longer friendly. It means the opposite. It means just this. Does that make sense to people? Again, think for these vocabulary quizzes, think in terms of 1 or 2 words. Okay, this one I wasn't sure what they were doing. Okay, and this one, yeah, again, I wasn't sure what, they get too long and I can't really tell what they're doing. Okay, so this one worked, as long as we didn't have this, but their personalities are remarkably not alike. Disparate means not alike. Okay, so just double check, make sure that you really are writing down what the word, yeah, again, this was a whole, now they really got into paraphrasing the whole sentence. The other duck didn't like the other duck, okay, but I said, but what does amorous mean? Okay, so this person got worse and worse as she went on, okay? So be sure that you can take what you write down here and replace that word in the sentence and have it make sense. This doesn't make any, I mean, and the sad thing is I hate to mark it wrong, because yes, the person is getting what's going on, but I want people to follow the directions. I want to make sure they're following the direction. Okay, so that was just kind of wanted to tell people about the vocabulary quizzes in general. And then on the reading, on the Old Wives' Tales, this was, I kind of left you alone on this. I didn't come and help you so much like I did on the John F. Kennedy one, because I was wanting to see if people could get this. This was a little bit harder because it didn't have the really obvious clues. Remember, we've been looking for clues to a list, okay? It didn't have the ones that said first, second, third, or one example, another example, yet another example, like it did in the Kennedy one, okay? But once you see anything like that, one of these, what we're calling addition transitions, also misguided is the old wives' tale that the full moon causes crazy. Even just this word in the middle of the paragraph here needs to be a red flag to you. There's a list here somewhere. So I need to get in there and figure out what it is. People did a good job of trying, people who did catch this, tried to get the list into order. The notion, for instance, we decided that was going to be an example, that a mother bird will reject her babies if they've been touched by a human is completely false, okay? So this talks about birds. When does it stop talking about birds and start talking about something else? When does it stop talking about birds? Does this have anything to do with birds? No, okay. So a lot of this, we need to talk about this one. This was a little bit confusing to people, but the point is it shifted from birds to oysters. What's an oyster?
It's a shellfish.
A little shellfish, yeah. You buy it, you eat them. People like to eat them raw, but okay. Okay. Then, so here were two, birds, oysters, and then you finally have a clue also. Here's the full moon. Okay, birds, oysters, full moon. And this is the thing. This is the problem here, and something that you can do in your own writing. The reading classes help you with your writing, because you can say, as a writer, gee, if I had been writing this, I would have said, second, should you eat oysters? Then also, and then fourth, as a fourth example, what's the fourth one? Right, you got birds, oysters, full moon, poison ivy, okay, and then lastly, this did have an and at least, okay? And the last example is the flowers, okay? So I was kind of looking for people, and again, you got credit if you made an effort. Mother Bird, this is the same, you know, I'm encouraging you to make lists, but be sure your lists make sense. A lot of people were making an effort to do a list, but I wasn't sure what their list was, okay, as far as what the paragraph was saying. Mother bird will reject her babies. This goes with this. I wrote a little arrow. 2, the full moon. 3, the poison ivy. And 4, the flowers. And this was the one they skipped. Does that make sense to people? Okay. Many people skipped that oysters one. And a couple people just flat out said to me, Miss Penny, I have no idea what this means. So what does this mean? Should you eat oysters in months with an R in them? Old wives' tales say no, but there's no scientific or dietary reason not to. Has anyone ever heard that superstition? What does that mean? Don't eat oysters in a month with R in them.
Well, so far, like December, like the R.
Exactly, yeah. I think that's what tripped a lot of people up. It's simpler than you're trying to make it. A month that has an R in it, meaning September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. So what it's saying is you should only eat oysters in May, June, and July. Does that make sense? Yeah, it doesn't, it's easier than you're making it, okay? Ruth, do you know what the reason for that was?
I don't know what the reason is, but I've heard of that.
Yeah, I think it actually had something, I've heard that it had something to do with just the oyster's lifespan, that they're born, and usually the babies are born in the summer, May, June, and July, so they aren't big enough yet. But I think today, I think that was the old, you know, and that's the thing, some of these have a, you know, an idea of back when you just went out and got them out of the ocean. Yeah, they were too small to eat in the summer, or something like that. But nowadays, they're commercially farmed, and I think they just grow all the time. So a lot of these have to do with old-fashioned ways of doing things. But that's what that one is. Yeah, a lot of people had a question about that. So yeah, only eat oysters in May, June, and July. Okay, so that's what that means. All right, so that I was looking for people to see that there was a list, and then we'll talk about the summary in a minute. Now, the vocabulary in this was tougher than the JFK one. The JFK one had a lot of just flat out restatement clues. This had them, but they weren't as easy, okay? This was okay, except here was one of the problems with this one. There was a definition with these first two, there was a definition within, there was a context clue within a context clue there. Old wives' tales are unverified claims that have survived for generations. That's your context clue. That's a flat out restatement. Old wives' tales, unverified claims that have survived for generations. But I took other, like this is fine. This person obviously had prior knowledge of this, okay? Then within that restatement clue, there's another restatement clue. This is the definition of this. So I think that kind of threw people, this one was correct. This was, unproven claims that have survived for generations, and then this means unproven, okay? A notion, this is kind of like, remember the theory and the scenario? I accepted a lot of different answers here. Some people put superstition, which again, like theory and scenario, that isn't really what it means, but in this case, this does mean superstition. A notion is really just an idea. This one I tried to give credit if there's any kind of, sense to it, but I couldn't quite get what she was doing here, okay? So the notion or the idea, the superstition, the belief, some people put belief, the belief that a mother bird will reject her babies. What are these? What are hatchlings?
Baby eggs,
Baby birds. Okay, I got
baby birds.
an amazing
I gave you the wrong
variety of
answer.
answers for that one. Okay, yeah, that is a restatement clue. Let's see. Here's what was interesting. I looked it up. Oops, I cannot do anything today. This computer is okay. This was a restatement clue, and here's a direction. Use context clues in sentences and in the paragraph. So that was a clue that some of these clues were not in the same sentence. A mother bird will reject her babies. Birds don't have a strong enough sense of smell to tell if the babies. This is the restatement, but it was kind of far away. Okay, people put down some very interesting things. So here are and they're, when I looked it up, here's some baby birds, these ones, but they're also this kind. Hatchlings can also be spiders, these can be hatchlings, these can be hatchlings, turtles, here's some owls. I always love to look at baby animals. So those are, yeah, so those are hatchlings. Anything that has just hatched out of an egg. Okay, so this one I gave her a half because I wasn't sure what she meant by eggs with chicks. Maybe just coming out of an egg. Okay. Misguided, what does that prefix mean? If somebody misleads you, what are they doing? You say, you really misled me on this.
You're wrong.
Wrong.
Probably
Yeah.
wrong.
So mis means not, it means wrong. So this is okay, but basically it meant wrongly guided wrong. This had a restatement clue. This was another one that you had to use the whole thing, what was going on here. Eating the leaves of poison ivy will render your skin immune. What does this word mean? What are you if you're immune to something? You say
Resistant?
what?
Resistant? Like resistant
Yeah,
to
you're
being sick or?
resistant. Okay, right. Yeah, they say you get enough colds, as you get older, you've had all these colds. Every time you get a cold, it's a slightly different bug. So as you get older, eventually you become kind of immune to them because you've had all of them and you don't get them so much anymore. Okay, so yeah, you build up a resistance. So if you think about it that way, that what's going on here, eating the leaves of poison ivy will make you, it just means create, make, will make you immune. Anybody ever heard that one? That sounds pretty dangerous, okay? So again, I accepted a number of answers there. This one you should have recognized because this was on one of our regular vocabulary quizzes just the other day. I put that on there purposely to see if people recognized it. What does this mean, X?
Take away.
Okay, this means, X means out or away. And what does this mean? TRAC. Like a tractor, remember tractor? What does tract mean? That's what, I want you to be using those roots that we've used. Tract means to pull.
You said it.
Okay, I don't know, I'm sorry, I didn't put my hearing aids on, I need to put my hearing aids on. Thank you, Louise. Yes, people are saying things they don't hear. Yeah, so this means pull away or pull out. Okay? So again, take some time with these. Look, check to make sure, you really do. Yes, you have to read the whole thing several times. That's the whole point here. You have to glance it over once, looking for a list, looking for a reversal translation. A lot of people caught this, that was good. Ask some questions about the title. then see if there's any kind of list, even just one word here is gonna give you an idea that you need to be looking for the rest of the things on the list, okay? So as far as the summary, again, we had two, I picked up two answers, not that other people didn't have good answers, but, which one is this? Remember, you have a choice here at this point in the semester. You could have, I asked you to write a paraphrase of 1 or 2 sentences. You could have tried to restate all 5 of those things, which was a little complicated for this one, especially with those oysters. But this person did an amazingly good job of doing that in just 2 sentences. That was the other thing. The old wives' tales, and there's something else I want to talk about. I don't talk about too much grammar in this class, but why is the apostrophe in that word outside the S?
Oh,
A lot of people tried to do this.
it's like including all of like, it's making it
Yes.
its ownership or,
This is its ownership, this is, and all of them is the clue. This is called a plural possessive. So the tails, in other words, the tails belong to not just one old wife, but a whole lot of old wives. And that's the spelling, so wife is singular, but if you have more than one wife, it's this. Whoops. So the possessive of wives has the apostrophe out there. Are they, do you know what old wives mean? Are these women, are old wives necessarily married? What's an old wife?
Like superstitions that people believe?
Well, the old wives, they were people, and they weren't necessarily anybody's wife, but they were like the what do I want to say, the
old hags?
yeah, and that's one of the words for them, the crones, the hags, the witches is basically a lot of what they were. The old women that you probably have heard stories or will hear stories of years ago, they used to think if people's cows got sick, that some old woman in the village had put a spell on them. You know what I'm saying? It's in every culture, the idea that an old woman who lives by herself and grows herbs and, you know, makes natural medicines has some sort of magical powers, okay? And that's what they're talking about here. They're not necessarily talking about people's wives, because a lot of those women weren't married. That was part of why they were considered so strange, you know what I'm saying? So an old wife, in this case, is the medicine woman of the village, kind of. And a lot of these, as you can tell, the business of the poison ivy kind of came down through things like that. Some of those remedies that those old women had many, many years ago, we still use. A lot of the medicine that we have today is made from those plants that they used to use, but some of them are dangerous, like poison ivy. Okay, yeah, so that's what they mean by old wives. So this says the old wives' tales have a lot of fake superstitions, such as a mother bird will reject her hatchlings if they've been touched by humans' hands. You should not eat oysters on any month with the letter R. There's a lot of criminal activity when there's a full moon. Eating poison ivy leaves will make your skin immune to the rash. And bringing flowers to a sick person will take out the air from the room. Kind of a long sentence, but it's perfectly punctuated in a series, and it's got a complete sentence. Although these are fake, some people still believe in them. Okay, that's good. And this, of course, the word these refers to the list, okay? So that was where people got into a little bit of trouble. If you didn't choose to do this, which was difficult, this person did an excellent job of getting this all into one sentence. okay? You could have, and this was perfectly okay too, except it's another one of these things I wanted to talk about where people are not reading my comments on the papers and they continue to make the same mistake. This paragraph is saying that. Should she have started it this way? No, okay. So I said, don't start summaries with this paragraph is saying that. But once she cut that out, this was also okay. Old wives' tales are not always true. Now, this didn't say that none of them are true. It stopped just short of that. Some are, some have proven to be true, but most of them, okay, old wives' tales are not always true, and some of them are misleading, yet people take them seriously, okay? Now, the reason this person didn't have to go through the list is that they have a word in here that indicates that there was a list in the paragraph. What's the word that saved this person from? What's the word that indicates there's a list? Yeah. You had to have a word in there somewhere that indicated that in this paragraph, some of them are listed without saying in this paragraph. It's tricky. This is tricky wording, okay? So this one was also okay. Does that make sense? Without this. Without the in this paragraph it's saying. Okay, so again, we're going to do this again this week. What is the reading going to be about this week?
The civil rights movement.
The civil rights movement, okay? Anybody ever heard of that? What's the civil rights movement?
Yeah,
When was the civil rights movement?
like when our country, you know, changed rights for different peoples, like voting and stuff like that
Okay.
for women.
And when did that take place?
A long time ago, like right around the Civil War.
Good, but that's it, exactly. Because we've talked about the Civil War, I want to get the connection. Luis, when did it take place?
In the 1960s.
Like
Yeah.
70s?
100 years after the Civil War, the civil rights movement took place. Okay? So, yeah, it's interesting, people, these days, to you guys, that all seems like, yeah, that all happened a long time ago. But there's some, just, I know, the young people, everything is ancient history. So the civil rights movement was 100 years after the Civil War. But the connection is, we talked about Frances Wright and her Neshoba. So she was before the Civil War. What happened to the slaves at the end of the Civil War in 1865? What did that war do for the slaves?
1865, the slaves were freed.
They were freed.
But they were not equal.
Okay, that exactly. Luis has it. That's where people get mixed up, especially young people today. Oh, but the slaves were freed in 1865, so why did we need this 100 years later? Okay, yes, they were freed, but did they have the same rights that white people had in this country? No. So it took another 100 years to get that straightened out. Okay, so again, you can look it up if you like between now and Thursday. Read what it says. Find a website, read what it says, but do not write anything down just yet. Okay, read it if you can, print it out, do some annotation on it, try to figure out what it says. Okay, and then put it aside and look away from it and do just what we're doing in here. Try to paraphrase. What did you just learn from reading that website about civil rights? Okay, Or wait until you read the reading on Wednesday and then write about that, because then now that is something that you know about. Okay? But again, don't just go to a website and write down, the civil rights movement took place between 1955 and 1968. Okay? You didn't know those dates before you walked in here today, okay? Okay, and then it will be something about that. Okay, now I have a little list of things. I think I got everything. Okay, so let's look at the homework that we did for today. And again, we are still working on this. I don't expect anybody to be doing everything perfectly right away. We're going to continue to add to this and continue to work on the things we've already covered. Okay, so let's look at these ones that we had. And you know, like I said, we've been looking for lists here, and as we know from some of the paragraphs we looked at, there are different types of lists and different levels of lists. Some are really obvious, they say first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Some of them, like the one that we did a couple of weeks ago about the vocabularies, really just had two things in that list. And the one about the Civil War damages, remember that? Those paragraphs, rather than being able to pick out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, remember those paragraphs, they kind of went in parts. They have one thing and then another thing. The reading vocabularies and the writing vocabularies. The money that it cost, the money that the Civil War cost, and the damage that it did. Remember, so lists can take any kind of form. Sometimes there are 5 or 6 things. Sometimes it says there are 5 reasons people buy things. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't say, here are 5 examples of old wives' tales that aren't true. So you as a reader have to be able to pick out both kinds. Okay? So as we're looking through these different paragraphs, and as we go into this one for Thursday, keep that in mind. Okay, now we are going to, I have the worst trouble with writing increments. Here. Highlighter that won't obliterate the words. Okay, what do you see mentioned throughout this first paragraph? The fly trap, okay, yeah. So remember, what we're doing is we're following our handout here. Read paragraphs through at least twice to fully understand what the author is saying, okay? Read and highlight the title. Now here's something I haven't been having you do because it's kind of happened automatically. Read the first sentence and highlight it, okay? So in a short paragraph, that isn't always necessary, but the Venus flytrap is one of several carnivorous plants that actually eat insects, okay? As I've mentioned, very often the subject of the first sentence will be what the rest of the paragraph is about. But with a reversal transition like but, sometimes it isn't. But you do want to look at this and ask yourself, you can even write a note here, is this going to be the topic? Okay? The Venus flytrap is one of several carnivorous plants. Here's a vocabulary word. How many people know what this word means?
It means eating meat.
Eating meat, okay, as opposed to eating vegetable matter, okay? I don't know whether humans think of insects as meat, but they're not vegetables, okay? All right. So is the Venus flytrap mentioned again?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, yeah. So here, the plant, okay, remember, we're looking for the word itself or a reference to it. Here's the word itself, and here's the word itself. But the plant's leaves, them referring to the plant's leaves, the plant. Okay, so there's a lot of reference to the plant or its leaves. So we kind of say, okay, yeah, I think this is it. Is there a reversal transition in this paragraph? No. So that's a good sign. If we see this, it says the Venus flytrap is one of several carnivorous plants that eat insects. It doesn't then say, however, the palm tree is something else, and then go on to talk about it. So so we're pretty sure that's going to be about the Venus flytrap. Is there a list in this? Now wait a minute. Sam says no, because he's right. There isn't one that says, yeah, Ruthie sees it. What's the list?
It's describing how the
Yeah.
plant or how the leaves eat the insect.
Right, good. We're going to look at later in the semester, we're going to look at, I think, let's see. And as you found out, we kind of never get to something that we haven't already at least talked about. When we get to the very last week, we're going to have a topic called patterns. We're going to talk about patterns in paragraphs. One of the reasons I left this until the last is because by the time you get there, you're going to already know what this is. What they're talking about when Lorraine Fleming says patterns is she's talking exactly about these lists. You'll be able to pick out lists and think, what kind of list is this? As Ruthie said, this is a how-to list. It's how the plant does this. First, the plant's leaves remain open. Okay? Then what happens? Right? So again, I want you to think in terms of listing things here. Then what happens? This is a clue. When, this is a transition that indicates when, then, for about a week. That's an indication that time is going by. What happens first, what happens second, what happens next. So that's another type of addition. We've talked about those addition transitions, the words that indicate a list, that's another type. We've looked at the ones that say first, also, another, one more, that's one type. But these ones that have to do with time are another type, okay? So the insect lands, then what happens? What's the next step? Anybody? They remain open, an insect lands. Luis, what's the next step?
It triggers little hairs.
Yeah, the
Last
insect
portion.
triggers the hairs, triggers the little hairs. We don't think
It
of a
makes it
plant as
snap.
having hairs. Have you ever seen one of these things? They have little tiny hairs, okay? Then they snap shut.
Making pancakes on the side.
Okay. Then what happens? Now this is where some people
And then-
might have started eyes glazing over.
And then it stays
Okay.
closed for a week or so, and it digests the bug.
Okay, so what, good, so what about this? How can we paraphrase, remember what we're doing over here is making reading paraphrases, right? How do we paraphrase this? The plant then,
Secretes enzymes,
what does that mean?
both shoots out liquid.
Good, okay, yeah, good. It secretes enzymes. That's, if you are a science major, you probably understand that. But basically, what you're doing when you swallow food, the enzymes, the saliva in your mouth first starts to break it down, then the enzymes in your stomach starts to break it. So yes, shoots out liquid means not out of the plant, but you know, when our stomach rumbles, that's the acid in our stomach trying to digest something, right? Same thing. Those are, what does secrete mean? Louise said shoot out, but it's, anyone know that word, secrete? So this should be a question. Secrete just means you make it in